Hello. So, tell me, do you know? Do you know what time it is? Tell me, do you know? Do you know what time it is? Tell me, do you know? Do you know what time it is? It's time for story time. 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 Hey, it's time for story time. 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 Hey! All right. Our book is Curious George and the Hot Air Balloon. What do you think the book is going to be about? Let's find out. By Margaret and H.A. Reed. This is George. George was a good little monkey and always very curious. He was on a trip with his friends, the man with the yellow hat. It was the end of their vacation and they wanted to make just two more stops. They were in South Dakota, so of course they wanted to see Mount Rushmore. George had never seen anything like it. These are faces of our four great presidents. A tour guide said George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Mount Rushmore. Look, said a girl, there's something crawling on George Washington's head. The tour guide explained that some workers were making repairs on the faces. George watched the workers. Then he saw a helicopter fly by. It was taking tourists for a close up. Look! George thought that would be fun. Maybe we could take a ride later, the man said. But now we need to leave or we'll be late for the hot air balloon race. So they got back into their little blue car, and before long, they came to a whole field full of hot air balloons. George was delighted to see such big balloons. He liked their spots and stripes and stars, but his favorite had a picture of a bunny on it. Can you find the bunny? One balloon was not yet up in the air. Its owner was hurrying to fill it as a newspaper reporter took pictures. The man with the yellow hat watched the balloon on the ground, but George watched the balloons in the sky. He was curious. Why didn't they fly away? Then he saw the ropes. A rope is a good thing to keep a balloon from flying away, thought George. A rope is a good thing to climb. Hmm. Sometimes when a monkey sees something to climb, he can't help himself. He has to climb it. George thought he would climb just one rope, then quickly climb back down. But when George climbed up there was no way to climb back down. The rope had came undone, and there was only one place to go. Up, 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 up went the balloon, and George went with it too. See George climbing the rope? See the rope coming undone? Up, 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 up goes George. George flew higher and higher and higher and higher, and the people below grew smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. The man with the yellow hat was tiny. The newspaper reporter was too, and the owner of the balloon wasn't very big, but he was big enough for George to see he was angry. George felt bad. He didn't mean to take the balloon. He didn't even know how to fly it. As the wind blew, as the wind blew and whisked him away, he wished he had someone to help. George climbed into the basket. When he looked around, he found he wasn't alone after all. The race was on, and he was in the lead. Together, the balloons flew across the field and over the forest. Now George was having fun. But before he knew it. What do you think happened? What do you think happened? George was alone again, and the fun was gone. Flying by himself high in the sky, George was frightened. That means scared. He would, he would, how would he ever get down? He wondered. Oh, if only he hadn't climbed that rope. Suddenly the wind blew, changed, and George saw something. What did he see? He saw something that he remembered he saw before that could help him. What did he see? Mount Rushmore. And who do you think could help him? Let's find out. It was the workers, and he was stranded on George Washington's nose. George was so happy to see the worker, he didn't notice how happy the worker was to see him. Slowly, the balloon floated closer. Would it come close enough? It did. The worker grabbed onto the rope and climbed up. Soon he was in the basket with George. Hooray! George was rescued. Hooray! The worker was rescued too. They sailed up over George Washington's head and landed safely in a tree. Soon a whole crowd came to rescue them both. The man with the yellow hat was happy to see George. The reporter was glad to have such an exciting story to report. And the owner of the balloon wasn't angry anymore. Everyone had seen the rescue. George was a hero. After the workers thanked him, George got a special treat. What do you think that treat was? He got to ride in the helicopter. The helicopter flew George and the man with the yellow hat once more past the president, then back to the little blue car. As they drove away, the man said, That was some vacation, George." George agreed. It was an exciting vacation, but they were both very glad to be home. Be and bye bye.